All right, everybody. My name is Dan, and digitally sitting across from me, but in the same town, Kyle, and we are Man Therapy Podcast. Welcome to the official episode number 1 of this podcast. And I got to start off with a very serious topic this morning, and that is being regular. I'm 44 years old, and I have this morning routine. I drink my coffee. I go to the bathroom. I do my business. This morning, that did not happen. And now I feel mentally and physically off.
You are off.
I know.
Yeah, it's the Wild West now. You don't know what to expect now the rest of your day.
No, because you're always guessing. You're like, when is it going to hit? Do I have time to, right after this, every year, the fourth graders, they have their track and field day at the school. Am I going to have to drop a heater at a toilet that I don't want to do it in when I'm very comfortable in my own toilet at my house?
Yeah, you might have to. My heart goes out to you, man. I think we all know what that's like.
Yeah. Yep. So I've started to GoFundMe.
Yeah, that's good. I'll start a prayer circle and a dinner chain.
Yep.
Meals will start arriving at your house. High in fiber.
It's all laxatives. Just laxatives.
Right.
Before we start recording, you had a really good idea, and that would have been branded Man Therapy smelling salts.
Yeah. And protein shakes.
Yeah, for the dad.
My breakfast protein shake, and you commented on it, and I crushed it really masculinely, and then just the ideas just started flowing from there.
Yeah, dude.
I've never done smelling salts. Have you?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Okay. I was knocked unconscious in a rugby game. I went down this was 20 years ago, maybe even more. I went down to tackle a guy right as he lifted his knee up, and it hit me right under the jaw, and I just turned into a noodle, right? I flopped to the ground. And I'm sure there's been some residual effects over the course of my life because of those types of injuries. But I don't know. I just remember some people around me, and then I kind of was like, oh, where am I at? And the funny part about these rugby tournaments, there wasn't really any safety or doctors at these tournaments. It was just like, hey, I'm a doctor, or I'm a veterinarian, or I know, some guy going, I know a doctor type of deal. And then they don't even help you. They just drag you off the field so they can continue playing. And then you're just on your own after that.
Right.
Safety first.
Give your partner some folk wisdom, don't let him sleep tonight. Or let him sleep. I don't know. Get him out of here, though.
Yeah. So no whiskey, just Red Bull vodkas. That's it.
That's right.
Yeah, buddy. How's your week been, dude?
Good and busy. Work is really busy, which is a good thing for me since I'm self-employed. And that's been an absolute trip for me. And I didn't know what to expect when I went out on my own. So I've been a full-time professional psychotherapist for the past 14 years and always worked for someone else. So first 12 years of my career worked for various agencies, and I worked for the university for 7 years, and then was finally like, you know what? This job is great and the people I work with are great, but I'm just doing less and less and less of what I really like to do, which is the actual therapy, meeting with clients. And so I decided to go out on my own, and that was terrifying. And that's a topic that I think we can both relate to, that wouldn't be surprised if we talk a lot about. But man, the major difference to me with working for myself versus for someone else is I am so much more motivated to work really hard for myself. And when things get really hard and stressful, I just respond to it differently. I'm here for it. There's the thought doesn't cross my mind of oh man, I wish I didn't have to do this. I wish all those things. It's more all right, let's do it. Let's show up, because I like having the stress on me to provide for my family. And I know the harder I work, the more money I make. That's really cool. If you work for someone else, they just want you to work harder and harder and harder and harder as much as you're willing to, but you don't see that's never reflected in your paycheck. So it's really 100%. A trip to work for yourself.
I will say there's I have this huge flexible schedule. What I do for a living, I'm able to encompass a passion into what I'm doing. Like my passion is the outdoors. I love hunting and fishing, and so a lot of my content that I deliver is about that. On top of that, I own the company, and that flexibility is awesome. Now, here's the kicker: that it's a yin and yang, give and take, balancing act type of deal, because you can love what you're doing, but then there's this weight that you also carry. Whereas if my business does not succeed, there's nobody to blame anything on except yourself, and that sometimes is an overwhelming weight to carry. When sometimes I'm laying in bed going, dude, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Because I'm in this every year. I don't get paid every month, right? Mm. So the last 2 months have been paid $0. Okay, but we're coming up on contract renewal season, and so that's where I make all my money in maybe a 4-month period. Wow. Leading up to October, and then that gets distributed throughout the entire year, right? And so when the economy starts to shift and you start to see trends in how companies use their marketing budgets and things like that, it makes me worried, because I always worry, even though I know the last couple of years it's always worked out, but because they don't get back to you until it's time. And then you're like, holy shit, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And then it's this gigantic sigh of relief, or it's an, oh shit, I got to do something different now.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Do you feel like being self-employed has made you care more about the workings of the world and our government?
Well, yes. I mean, so I'll just tell you straight up, these tariffs that are going in place with this current administration are going to directly impact the manufacturers of the products who advertise who I have advertising deals with and sponsorship deals with. So if they have to pay, and this is just in general, if a product goes up and they don't raise their prices or whatever the case is, most of that time it comes out of the marketing budget, right? So every year I hear the same excuse from companies, and it's like, oh yeah, our marketing budget has been shrunk, or we have to, we're doing something a little bit different with our marketing budget, this marketing budget, that. And so, 99% of the people who tell me no, not because of what I'm putting out is bad, but because their budget has been reduced because of inflation or tariffs or you name it. There's so many different things. And so I start to see the trends in that. I know the industry that I'm in is affected by that. And so I know that I have to do a really good job of basically telling people, hey, listen, your money is well spent with me. So, and sometimes that's hard.
Oh, absolutely. And how long have you been doing this on your own? When did you leave the corporate world, so to speak?
Yeah, so what was it? I started podcasting in 2014, and then in 2017 I started the network, and then in 2018 I had already kind of built some of that stuff up, and they pulled me into a room one day at work. They go, hey, we're having a quick meeting. Can you come in? I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay. And then I saw all these people stand up out of their chairs. Then we walked into this conference room, and they said, today is your last day at this. And they fired, I think, 60 people company wide, maybe even a little bit more, or laid them off. Yeah. A permanent layoff. Yeah. And so instead of getting worried, like I probably should have, like any other normal person, just lost their job, 3 children, one of them's a baby, right? Yeah. You got a wife. Like a lot of people would have been, oh shit. I stood up out of my desk. I went over to the guy who just fired me, and I was like, hey, what time do you think we're going to get out of here? I'm going to go and like, I got stuff to do today. And he's like, you can leave whenever you want. And I'm just like, cool. Hey, like, I gave him a knuckles and I walked out. Right.
Wow.
And so here's the scary part though, Kyle. I'm sitting there trying to make this business work. I had some money kind of in this account that was going to float me for a couple months. Now this is a story that I never have really, I've told her now that, but at the time, I think I had $7.90 in an account. That was it. And I didn't tell my wife because my wife is the kind of person who would have freaked the hell out and would have just made the situation worse if she knew that.
Right.
And so a week later, I got my first check for like 10 grand. And that floated me until the next check. And then I had some things set up, and then I started seeing some return. And the next thing you know, I'm in the position that I am now, still worrying about money every single day. But it's what you get when you decide to be the dude in charge and run things. So, because there's another dude at the company that I was at who's doing the same thing, who's balancing budget, who is 100% in charge of all the financials. And he's like, dude, my job kind of depends on how I manage this company. Right. And so, but it's the same thing on a smaller scale, just with a single family. So what about you? When did you drop out?
Yeah. Drop out. Yeah.
Drop out.
Yeah. That's a funny way to put it. Yeah. Two years ago in February, my birthday is February 4th. I set up my last day of work to be February 3rd. One thing I don't like about myself, but I know to be true, is like, I need my back to be up against the wall to make big moves. I hate change. I'm highly anxious of change, scared. So it takes a lot to make me make a big change in life. So I was getting pretty burned out where I was at. Again, the people that I worked with were great, but it's just like was getting to be too much on my plate and not enough of what I really wanted to be doing, which was seeing clients. I was also teaching a class at the same time. So I was working my full-time job and then teaching a class in the social work grad program. So I was, doing those two things at the same time, which ate up all my time. What I really wish I would have done would have been to start my private practice on the side while working my full-time job. In fact, I've talked to lots of people since I've gone out on my own that have been considering going out on their own, other therapists, friends of mine. And I have told them all the same thing, like, just start it on your own on the side, jump through all the hoops and sign up for all the things and get credentialed and all. There's so much that goes into it, man.
Yeah.
And, do all that while you still have a steady paycheck coming in. And yeah, it'll be a lot. You'll be working a lot of hours after work. And, but then you have like a lot more safety. So I basically had, my wife and I had savings, and we were like, all right, I think if I quit and start doing this full time, I bet I fill up pretty quickly and our savings will get us by. And dude, I did not fill up as fast as I thought I was going to. And so it got real scary because we started burning through our savings. I mean, we were being responsible. We weren't like buying stuff that we shouldn't have been buying. We were just paying the bills, but a month goes by and you're like, yep, that was the plan. And then another month goes by and you're like, okay, that's fine. Then another month goes by and you're like, all right, well, if this keeps happening, this is going to be bad, because I wasn't filling up because I kind of, mistimed, through no fault of my own, just the way the world worked, mistimed my entry into the market, so to speak. So my plan was to only work virtually. I didn't want to have an office. I didn't want to have that overhead. I just wanted to work from my home office. And, this was like near the end of when everyone was kind of staying in and workers didn't have to go into the office again yet. But it was at the end of that. So I think people were kind of people were getting sick of doing everything virtually. And so here I was trying to start a virtual counseling business. And I just wasn't, I would get lots of messages from people that were like, that said they wanted to do in person. And I was like, oh, I'm only meeting with people virtually. And they're like, oh, shoot. Well, if you were in person, I'd see you, but that's okay. I guess I'll keep looking. And
Yeah.
so, the writing was on the wall real fast. Like, uh-oh, I'm going to have to get
Yeah.
a physical office. And once I did that, then I started filling up. And then the way that my business works is that if I meet with someone, say on the first of the month, I probably won't get paid for that session until 2 to 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
So, it's just a whole bunch of burning through your savings and just holding your breath. And, it starts with a trickle. You just get a few clients, and then you get a few more and a few more, and it takes a while for it to ramp up, is how it worked for me. But I think it would have been much different had I started my private practice while I still worked for the university. I really wish that's what I would have done.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you're forced into do things that you don't really want to do. And
Yeah.
whether it's timing, whether it's money, whether it's, things that are not under your control, so to speak. My next question for you is, when you decided to go out on your own and do your own thing, what kind of support did you get from family and friends, if any?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Love that. Lots of support. I that was really heartwarming to me, actually. My family, extremely supportive. I actually did end up borrowing some money from my parents. I went to my dad before I went out on my own. I went to him and said, "Hey, Dad, like, I don't know how this is all going to go. I have savings. I assume this is all going to go fine, but just in case it doesn't, would there be a possibility that I could borrow money from you?" And I've never asked him for money before, so that felt, I was 40,
Yeah.
and that felt weird, and that was a bit humbling. But man, to me, the best reason for me to be willing to humble myself like that and ask my dad for money was for my family.
Yeah.
I will humble myself for my family.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be too good when it comes to that. So I said, could I, if I need to? And he said, yes. And so I said, okay, cool. And I burned through my savings because I wasn't filling up fast. And then I did end up needing to borrow money from him. And he was very, like, no questions asked. I believe in you. Very cool. I believe in what you're doing. And so that was enormous support. My wife was really supportive, just continuously encouraging me. My friends were great. We have some mutual friends that are also counselors. I leaned on other therapist friends of mine that had already done what I'm trying to do, and they gave me lots of advice. So yeah, it really forced me to. So a thing about me is I like to be independent. I like to look like I know what I'm talking about. I don't like asking for help. I like figuring things out on my own. And this whole experience humbled me so much. I had no idea how to do any of it. When I researched it, I'd get a lot of conflicting information. So I really had to go hat in hand to people that I trust and like, hey, how do you do this? Or how does this work? Or how did you do this? And just admit that I didn't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a huge growth experience for me.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, that sounds awesome. Like, I'll be honest, I got zero when I was laid off. Everybody was like, okay, well, you got to start applying for jobs. Right. And so this is kind of where the topic, I want to come into the topic, but I want to share the story, but come into the topic.
Okay.
A little bit that maybe it's an idea at now, maybe it goes nowhere, maybe it goes somewhere, but so, like, I come from a very traditional family, right? Everybody had a job. My dad worked at the same job for however, like 20 plus 30 years. My father-in-law worked at a job 30 years. My mother-in-law worked at the same job for 30 years. My mom, she bounced around a little bit, but it's just like big working for the man, save, get your 401k up, save your money, do your thing, work 40 plus hours. My dad was a workaholic. He worked all the time. And he's still the dad. So when I decided, hey, I'm going to do this, nobody was like, you can do this, dude. You can do it. Maybe my brother, but it wasn't like, he wasn't supportive in, he wasn't like, go out there and get him, dude. He was like, okay, man, I hope it works out. What, like that kind of deal. Right. But like when now you're fighting you want to get this momentum behind what you're doing and then have nobody believe in you that you can do it. That was struggling. That I struggled there because everybody wanted me to do something else other than what my vision was telling me to do. Right. And so I don't know if I did a poor job of showing people the road that I was on and trying to show them what my goal was and tell people what I was doing. And maybe it was that, and maybe I didn't do a good enough job at that, but I just felt like, I don't know, I'm a very optimistic person, like a positive person in certain aspects of my life. So when someone says to me, hey, dude, I'm going to try this thing, I'm like, dude, good luck, go get them, work hard, do all this stuff. And I felt like all I got was, are you sure about that? Like, are you sure you're going to be able to do that? Dude, you got 3 kids. And I'm like, don't you think I already know I have 3 kids and a wife and I got mortgage due and all this shit? And it wasn't until recently where people started telling me, and this was after years of running my own business. It was like, hey, I'm proud of you. Like my mom said, I'm proud of you. And I'm just like, thanks. And I held a little bit of a grudge. Like, why didn't you tell me that in 2018 when I started doing that type of shit? Right. Yeah. Instead, everybody's worried like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Yeah. Like, and so, that was fairly hard. And so I had a little bit of, here's the buzzword, resentment towards these people for not believing in me. Right. And so my question to you is, actually, it's not really a question. It's like the topic of today. And it might be like anytime there is conflict or anytime there is a misunderstanding or 2 people have an argument or something like that, how important is it to look at yourself and what you're doing before you start like thinking other people have to change or they're the problem and not you?
Right. I think that's a really insightful question. It's funny that you asked that question because as you were saying all of that, my thoughts went to, hey, Dan, let me challenge you a little bit. What do you think was going on inside your family's minds when their son, their brother is stepping out of the norm, going to go do something that none of them have any understanding of? Yeah. What do you think? Where do you think their hesitation was coming from?
Well, I'm guessing a little bit of it had to do with like me being a fuck up part of my life. Like
would you by your own definition say that you were a fuck up?
Oh yeah, dude. Okay. From the time I turned like not 8, but like 8th grade. Yeah. Right. And then, I turned 21. And then from the time I was 21 until the time I started, I got married and started to settle down a little bit, dude, I was kind of a social piece of shit.
From 8th grade on.
Well, I mean, I started drinking like alcohol. Like my first sip of alcohol was in like 7th or 8th grade. Oh, yeah. And then it was like party. Right. And then I hit 21. I can go buy that myself. And then it was the priority in life was nothing except alcohol, partying, doing things that did not contribute to society at all, making poor decisions, and probably people seeing that in me, especially family. Now, my wife didn't necessarily get to see me at my worst per se, but my family did. And so I'm guessing from a empathetic standpoint, I could understand how they feel because they saw me how I was in the past. Yeah. If that makes any sense.
Oh, it makes a ton of sense. So it sounds like 2 things are true at the same time. One is that you hadn't earned their trust
Mm-hmm.
and respect in that way, and you fully admit that.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that's also true at the same time is that it still hurt that you didn't get it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so this was a bit of a coming of age for you. This was almost like the butterfly that has to struggle to get out of the cocoon to build some strength to go prove themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. And I still think there's part of it where I still don't feel like people trust me with what I'm doing and maybe that is the entrepreneurial side in me where it's like, I don't know. I hate to swear, but this is what's in my brain. I'm just like, fuck that. I'll show you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you don't believe in me? Go, screw off. I'll show you that I can do it type of deal. And that's kind of where it's like, it's almost cynical to have these thoughts about another person. And it's like, you don't believe in me? All right. I am successful now. How about that? Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't know.
Yeah. It's good that you're able to be motivated by it. I would still challenge you to talk to your most important stakeholders and talk to them about what their experience is with you doing this and what life is like for you now. I mean, if you want to do that, I mean, maybe you want to keep this fire burning in your belly in that way. But there's also a chance that a lot of this is coming from your own lens and your own position and your own insecurity, and that you've kind of maybe held your cards close to your chest to the point that they don't really know what you do or exactly how things are going for you.
Yeah.
But maybe you could educate them. There's also a chance that this is all kind of like pretty out of their awareness, that if they're used to the, really structured, standard 9-to-5 work for somebody else, then it's just like, I'm sure the first person is like, oh, I'm going to go to the moon. Their mom was like, oh, that's nice, honey. Like, like, if they don't know.
Aww.
I build computers and I work on the internet. And the previous generation's like, oh, that sounds neat. They don't know. They don't know what they don't know.
Exactly. And that's something that I feel like, but I feel like that was part of my problem, going back to kind of looking inward, is there's some people I feel need the business plan, or they need the path. Okay, let's sit down. Let's have this talk. Here's what I'm going to do. Right. And then there's other people that are like, I don't need to tell you shit. I'm going to do whatever I want to do, and you're going to deal with it type of mentality. And so, I don't know. I think there was a mixture of both of those in all parties involved. But I think now that people have seen that I've done this over the course of however many years, they're telling, like, my dad has on the tailgate of his truck, he has my businesses, like big logo stickers on the back of his truck that he bought and he's put on the truck. And now he's kind of a supporter of what I do and how I do it. And so, I don't know. There's still, like, especially for my wife, and I think a lot of it has to do with financial issues.
Yeah.
So I have a business account that all of my checks go into, and then there's a separate account that I pay, because I only get, she sees that 0 months worth of income, and she's like, oh my God, what's going on? What's going on?
Right.
Well, she doesn't see that. So I've set up accounts to where the money I put that money in once a year, like here pretty soon, I'll just dump a whole bunch of money to it, and then it's automatically paid. And so for her, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind. And then when I think this kind of goes back into what I need to do better, is to share with her the financial situation of where we're at, because she sees things and she's like, well, like, I want to go on a vacation. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know for sure how much money we're going to have right now. So I can't sign up for anything until those checks do come in. And they've always came in, and they've always, we've always done our thing, and, our kids are in sports, and we're spending the money and living a good life and doing that stuff. But I still sense worry and frustration, and I feel like I have to do a better job at getting into that and sharing that information, especially with my wife.
Oh, absolutely. To me, that's where the budget saves the day. That's where the numbers don't lie, and the numbers aren't emotional. That's where it's like, here's how much we have, here's how much is coming in, here's how much is going out. So like, yeah, I want to go on vacation too, definitely. Here's the numbers. Here's how much is in this account. Here's how much isn't in this account. Like, we can't go on vacation right now. Tell you what, we will be able to make a decision about vacation when the next wave of money comes in, and we can allocate all of it. Because to me, there's just a huge difference between making decisions based on emotions versus making decisions based on facts and numbers. And I think, especially financially, decisions need to be made on facts and numbers, and not like, I feel like doing this, so I do it.
Yeah,
it needs
exactly.
to be how much. All right, like, if you want to go on vacation, and I'm not speaking against your wife, because obviously she's totally valid in wanting to go on vacation. I'm also not assuming that she would be against all this, so I want to make that clear. But it's like, all right, we want to go on vacation. We either have the money for it or we don't. Or, okay, how much will a vacation cost? Okay, cool. Where will we pull that money from? It's like, what else? Where are we not putting the money so that it will go to the vacation? And if it's like, well, we can't sacrifice any of these other areas that we're already spending money on, I guess we're not going on vacation right now. So then it's like, okay, well, when can we go on vacation? Well, how long will it take for us to save up that much money? So I think that it's maybe I don't want to assume that this is a man brain versus a woman brain thing. I don't want to make it like that, because I bet there's relationships out there where it's flipped, where the woman is really numbers oriented and the man's just doing whatever he wants, or whatever the case may be. But I still think, like, the numbers don't lie. It just needs to be a budget.
Yeah. So now we have this example of how we have conflict, right? Or we have this, something is frustrating me, or somebody else is frustrating me. How do you take the steps to communicate with those people, or knowing when to just be like, hey man, we need to talk. One thing, here's a term that I use all the time: pick your battles. Okay. How do we know when to pick our battles and maybe evaluate ourselves? Like, if I was coming to you and I was blaming everybody else and not taking any responsibility for any of these problems in my life myself, how would you as a counselor instruct me to take a look inside and maybe deal or change or educate myself on myself before going out and blaming everybody else for my problems?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, first of all, that would probably come out in conversation, that it would, I don't hesitate to call people out on that sort of thing. In fact, when I first start meeting with people, like our first meeting, I'll often say, like, hey, is it okay if I challenge you? Like, we're friendly. Like, I'm friendly, but I'm not your friend. Like, part of the value of coming to counseling is, like, I have to be a person that can just shoot it to you straight. Like, are you cool with that? And they always say yes to that question. And I think they always mean it. And so oftentimes I'll hear, if someone has that pattern where they're just blaming everyone else and not taking any accountability, then I'll say, hey, can I give you some feedback that might be kind of hard to hear? And they always say yes to that too, because we like to learn about ourselves. And I'll say, well, pattern that I notice is that, you seem to be really focused on everybody else and what they're all doing and how that's holding you back. I haven't heard you talk much about your part in this. So I ask, is it okay if we examine your part in this? And, they're like, yeah, let's do it. And so then I say, okay, tell me, what are the things that you think are within your control? And I ask mostly about emotions and behaviors. Like, how are you looking at this? And why are you looking at it that way? And then what are the behaviors that you're choosing to do? And what are the outcomes of those behaviors? And so we start looking for cycles that people get
Mm-hmm.
into and patterns. And um, I ask, like, all right, well, the proof's in the pudding. Like, things are working out how they're working out for you. What do you think is getting you where you don't want to be? And it's like, well, often they're like, well, they're not bringing up the stuff to their partner, or they only bring stuff up when there's a problem or when tensions are high, all these things. And so I just have them identify, like, how are things going? Why do you think they're going that way? What are some examples of ways you could try and do it differently? And I also ask, if you're going to be like a savvy communicator, how do you think you could communicate with your partner in a way that they would best hear it? Not just you feeling um, so justified to say whatever you think, however you want to say it. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to be a good communicator, you need to say it in a way that's going to land well with them.
Mm-hmm.
So they need to plan their message. Another question I like to ask is, if I had your partner sitting here, how do you think they would describe this situation?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you think it's like to be your partner?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
because usually, in my experience, and I feel free to push back on this, but like, everybody feels justified to feel how they feel.
Exactly.
Everyone feels like they're right. So okay, so let's assume that everybody's right and nobody's wrong. Fine. Now we have to find common ground.
Mm-hmm.
And I used the word. I said that I humbled myself when I had to ask for a lot of help when I started my private practice. I think marriage is really humbling, because I think we have to take a step back from our own ego for the good of our family. And that's true, I think, for both partners.
Yeah.
So, I would ask you, and I'd say as much or as little as you're willing to say about it, but what do you think it's like to be married to you?
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that.
I don't know. Like I I am that guy who I feel sometimes, and this is like, I don't know, I don't know if this is me trying to look at it, but sometimes I don't want to say I'm a control freak. Okay. Obviously, I like things done a specific way. I think one of the last times we talked about, like, I want bedtime to be at a specific time. I would love it if it was routined every night, but it doesn't happen like that all the time. And I struggle with that sometimes. So maybe I can come off as a little bit of a control freak about certain things, maybe. Being married to me, and I think this has less to do with my, like, it's more about a clash in maybe an optimist versus a pessimist type of scenario, where I always think the outcome is going to be great and everything's going to work out fine. And maybe my wife may have a less optimistic view of different scenarios and how things are. Maybe I fly by the seat of my pants sometimes, and she likes to be more prepared and scheduled on certain things sometimes, which is weird, because I want this scheduled routine, but at the same time make decisions on a whim on things like that. And so I can understand where she's coming from on a lot of her frustrations. And so I don't know. But I'm also the kind of guy who I think that when you talk about the optimist versus the pessimist and how they clash, I feel like sometimes I can be overwhelmingly positive to the point where it would annoy the pessimist. Right. Does that make any sense?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because they're going like, well, you're living in La La Land, like once you've gotten too
this
far
isn't the
away
dream
from
world.
reality,
yeah. This isn't the dream world, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I think to win over a pessimist, I think you have to take their concerns very seriously.
Yeah.
I think you have to first start with really getting on board with their perspective so that they feel like you thoroughly understand it.
Yeah.
And instead of too quickly jumping to just trying to plead your case. And I think that's a major miss in like a lot of relationships and just friendships and partnerships and all kinds of communication is like, I just want to share my point and you just want to share your point. And if I just share my point enough, then you're going to get it. And then we're going to be cool. And then I'm frustrated when you don't, because we're just talking over each other. And it's like, we're just trying to convince each other.
Yeah.
I really like go ahead.
I'm sorry, just to elaborate on that real quick. It's almost like when you're in a conversation with someone and you know they're not even listening to you. They are just waiting for you to stop talking so they can say what's in their brain.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I like the idea of if there's a person that I'm working with that's stubborn, that isn't just like automatically jumping on my plans, I kind of envision them as like a boat in the ocean. And my goal is not to be like a bigger boat that they run into, but my goal is to like come alongside them, join with them, and then slowly steer.
Yeah.
So the first thing that a person has to do is show that you really understand what they feel and why. And not in any kind of condescending tone of voice. So it can be like, you know, hey, it makes sense why you're worried about this. It makes sense why you're stressed out about this, and say the reasons why they're stressed. Or like, let's use the vacation thing as an example. Like, yeah, it makes total sense why you want to go on vacation. Like, life's stressful. We've been working our butts off. It would be super nice to get away and get out of here. Like, I'm with you. That makes total sense. I think we both deserve that. I think it would be great for the family. Yeah. Okay. And it's really wise to address the other person's main points so that they don't have to. So if you can basically argue their argument for them, then they will know that you understand. Right. Okay. And if you know the other person well enough, you can pretty much guess what their arguments are going to be and why. So beat them to the punch, and not in a sneaky manipulative way, but just in a like, I will demonstrate to you that I really understand what you want here. And once people feel understood, it's really disarming. You know, it's like, I know you want to go on vacation. Actually, I really do too. I think that'd be so fun for us. Lots of stress, da-da-da-da. And you say, all right, cool. Tell you what, let's figure out how we can make that happen. Let's look at the budget. And then you can turn the focus to like, all right, we're on the same team here. We're going to figure this out. And then you can apply it to bedtime too. I know that bedtime's really frazzling for you. It's easier if we just kind of go with the flow and just let things happen however they happen. It's stressful to try to get 3 kids to like pull in the same direction, and you know we're the ones that want them to end their day like they don't want to end their day. You know, and the older they get, the more stubborn they are, and all of these things. Like, I get it. Here's the downsides that I see to how we're doing things, and here's how I see that things could be better. Tell you what, like, what if I take the lead on this? Would you be willing to back me up?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the first thing that pops into my head is maybe there's another man out there who's listening to this, and he has something that he wants done. Okay. And he has to now go to his wife and basically apply what you've said to any conflict, or, try to steer the ship What happens now when the other ship that he's trying to help steer starts to pull away from him and try to pull him away? And this is a metaphor for what happens when someone just straight up disagrees with you and refuses to understand you or your beliefs or why you're coming to them to communicate. And I'm not talking about just like a man and a woman. I'm talking about this in business. Maybe it's a business partner. Maybe it's a brother or a sister. Maybe it's a father, son, any type of scenario where you have someone who thinks this way and another person who would like to see things changed, you take the proper steps. You go in and you say, hey, I'd like to talk about this. And the other person goes, I don't give a shit, basically. Yeah. Or like pulls against you at every moment and you think you're doing things the right way.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think the answer to that question probably varies based on the situation.
Yeah.
But, overarchingly, I also fall back on it's okay to disagree, and sometimes it's okay to walk away. And I don't mean that you have to walk away from the relationship, but
right.
Sometimes we have to accept that things aren't going to be like that. Like if your family was like, I don't know about this podcasting thing, and you're like, okay, well, I'm doing it.
Yep.
And I'll show you.
Yep.
I think it's okay to be anchored within yourself, which means you just believe in yourself and you believe believe in what you're doing. If you've come to a fundamental like stop in the road, man, that's a tough position. I guess I don't have like an easy answer for that, because I think sometimes that means things stop.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be okay with that. I guess if it's in like a marriage, then I think it's probably worth it to hang in there and keep doing whatever it takes to figure out how to get past it, whether it's talking to a counselor or digging deeper into like what's the fundamental difference here, and like digging as deep as you can until you find common ground to disarm the other person.
And I'm not talking necessarily about life-altering conflicts where it's like, I think we need to do this, and if we don't do this, we're going to get a divorce, or I'm stepping out of the family and I never want to see you again. Not that extreme. I'm talking about like day-to-day shit that is just like, all right, man, I need help getting the kids ready for school. Well, I have to work. Okay, so now the one person carries the weight of getting the kids ready. Meanwhile, the other person, maybe, I don't know, like that's maybe not a good example, but maybe there's some things in the house, or maybe somebody owns a business together and one person feels like they're doing all the work, or another person is saying, I'm doing this. Well, I'm doing this. Well, I'm doing this. And then you start comparing what you're doing to, like, it's almost like a checkbox.
Oh, absolutely.
Instead of being like, dude, I get it. Let's try to find a solution to this problem, instead of, all right, scoreboard type stuff.
Right. Well, I mean, I think you just did it. I think you just, the way that you spoke there, I think was a good example of how to make the shift of, once you notice that pattern, you can call it out and be like, hey, wait a minute, like, this isn't how I want to be with you. I actually want to be on the same team. Mm-hmm. And that's actually like a phrase that I like to use sometimes, like same team. Mm-hmm. We're not fighting here. I don't want to fight with my team member. Like, we're two all-stars on a team and we don't need to butt heads all the time. So same team. And that's where I think you can disarm them again by, and when I say disarm, I do not mean manipulate, but I'll say disarm them again by arguing their points for them. Mm-hmm. So that they feel heard, because a lot of times when people are stubborn and digging in their heels, it's because something's activated in them and they don't feel heard and they're feeling threatened. And so you can help them feel less threatened by expressing your understanding of their point of view, so that they can go, yes, that's it. That's how I feel. And a lot of times, if you can hang in there long enough to get that out of them, like get that real response that they really understand, that you really understand how they feel, then they're going to be much more open to what you say.
Yeah. Yeah. The other aspect of this I want to touch base on is maybe there's somebody. Yeah, okay, let me say this. Is there a problem with being too nice and letting the other and catering to another person all the time? Or maybe we can discuss both that and then being a negative, stomping your foot and being that version all the time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I actually think it's nice when marriages or any relationship just happens to go well. Like, that's cool. I do think, though, that like the higher the stakes, the more likely there is to be friction. like in a marriage or business partners. I think it's good for people to have another person to contend with. I don't think anybody should be a doormat. I think that, if you're too nice and too obliging and catering to the other person too much, that's likely a survival skill that you're using just to get by. And if you're doing that just to get by, then the family's probably not thriving, or the business is probably not thriving because there's a wound festering there. I think the person that's too passive will likely need to look into why they're being that way. And I think that they need to likely take the risk to step up and be someone for the partner to contend with. Because I think it's enabling to just, for one partner to just constantly roll over. It just lets the other person always be how they're going to be. I think a person needs to figure out how to stand up for themselves in a healthy way. Yeah, I think usually people come about their problems honestly. So like the pessimistic person, they're probably not excited to be a pessimist. Like they don't want to be that way, but there's something within them that makes them think that's the best strategy to use in life and or for that situation. And so I think part of the other partner's job then or assignment will be to figure out why the pessimist thinks that's the best path forward, show them that they really understand that, and show them why a different path will work out well. And saying it'll be fine is not enough. It needs to be like, here, let me really lay out for you why this other path will be better. And here's all the work that I'm willing to do that. And here's what I'm asking of you. Would you be against doing these things?
Yeah. Yeah. You brought something up there, the word enable. Okay. Is there a problem with being an enabler, or maybe explain the problem of being an enabler to make someone who disagrees with what you're saying, that frustrates them, then you flip to make them happy?
Wait, say it again?
Okay, so let's say I said, Kyle, I disagree with what you say. I would like to talk to you a little bit about that. You get mad and you're like, why are you thinking this way? I don't like that, blah, blah, blah. And I go, okay. All right, man, we'll do it your way. And now I've reinforced you being with your negative energy. I've reinforced it by giving up and being like, okay, yeah, okay.
Right.
Walk us through why that's an issue.
Well, it's an issue because it reinforces the pattern. It's an issue because there isn't equality in the relationship. So like we're just using marriage as an example, the marriage is a 50-50 proposition that hypothetically both people's opinions are equally important. So one person can't constantly defer to the other person. When you're constantly deferring to the other person, that's called subjugation. You're subjugating yourself to them, which means you're putting yourself, should be equal. Subjugation is when you put yourself in a one down position. I'm not as good as you. I'm not as important as you. My opinions are not as important as yours, so on and so forth, right? So this person always gets to be on top. This person's always on bottom, subjugated.
Yeah.
A major problem with subjugation is that after a while, the person that's in the one down position gets really sick of it, and they build up a lot of frustration, and they can end up flipping. They can only take it for so long, and that might be years that they can take it, but eventually it'll be too much. And then they flip so they can flip pretty radically to wanting things to be their way and being sick of it. And now you're dealing with extremes instead of dealing with things in small ways as they come up.
Yeah. Do you tend to see that in any type of, let's say, a drug abuse or any type of addiction where maybe let's say you're the husband, I'm the wife in this scenario, okay? And you have some kind of major addiction to drugs or alcohol or something, and I don't want to deal with all of the problems that brings to your personality. So I subjugate myself down and to the point where I resent you so much for how you are that I then flip and then I hold everything against you. And you're like, God, I hate you. I hate you. I hate you.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely. That can absolutely happen. That's, I think of if we zoom out, a thing that we're not talking about, but probably should be, is the importance of everybody to be working on themselves as we go. Because if we're not working on ourselves and being conscious and aware of who we are and pausing every once in a while to take like stock of who I am, what I think, why I think it, how am I behaving? How does that impact my wife, my family, the people around me? If we're not working on ourselves, then usually we're just getting deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper into whatever ruts we happen to get in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think
that's an excellent point. I'm so glad you brought that up, because humans as a race of people are almost arrogant to believe that we are never the problem. Mm-hmm. But we always play some type of role in the problem, especially in a relationship, because it's supposed to be a two-way street.
Yeah.
That's a great point. I like that. Yeah. And then on top of what you said earlier about working on yourself and then being able to humble yourself, not necessarily give up, but humble yourself and understand more of who you are and how your actions may react towards another person. I mean, that's huge in any relationship, marriage, business partner, friendship, period.
Yeah. One more thing that I think is really valuable here, and I know we need to wrap up pretty soon, but there's this explanation of how systems work in family systems theory. So it's basically like everybody in the family has a role they play.
Yep.
Okay. And it takes a little while, but everybody settles into a role. Mm-hmm. And once everybody in the system, this happens at work, happens in families, happens on teams, whatever, everybody settles into a role. And so then everybody treats them that way. And it's really hard to step out of that role once you've been put in a role. And if one person tries to step out of the role, the system tries really hard to put them back in their place.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And that maybe you saw some of that in when you quit your job, or when they decided it was time for you to quit your job to start podcasting. And your family, you were like, "Oh, I'm on a podcast," and they're like, that might have been a little bit of their way to try to like nudge you back into like, you should probably just do the status quo. You should probably just do what you're expected to do. Now, family systems theory would basically say there's three things that can happen, Dan. One thing would be that if one person's in a role they don't like to be in, one option they have is to just sit in that role forever and just eat a shit sandwich every day.
Yeah.
Another option that they have is, all right, I don't like this role that I'm in. I'm going to step out of my role and start doing things how I want to do them, knowing that's going to cause friction. Mm-hmm. And now if you step out of your role, then one of two things is going to happen. Actually, the first thing that's going to happen is the system's going to try to put you back in your place. But if you stand your ground and you don't go back into your old position, the system's going to try even harder to put you back in your place, because the system just wants to run how it always has. It just wants that homeostasis. So the system will try even harder to put you back in your place. But if you still dig in your heels and you refuse to go back to your old place, then one of two things will happen. The system will either kick you out and say, fine, screw you, or the system will adapt to you. And most people, this is my opinion, most people don't stick to their guns because they're afraid their system is fragile and they're afraid their relationships are fragile. They're afraid the system's going to kick them out. They're afraid the family's going to reject them, the team's going to reject them, colleagues are going to reject them, whatever the case may be, so they don't stick to their guns. But I actually think that it's much, much, much more likely that if they do stick to their guns and stay in the way that they want to be, the system's more likely to adapt to them and say, all right, fine, this is your new position, we'll run like this now.
Yeah. But now you're adding people to this theory. And it's like, how much do you want to take of the system rejecting you until the system itself changes?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And that's a personal decision.
Yeah. And I want to add a thought that popped into my head when we were talking about these situations. So I come from a lean manufacturing background. Okay. Do you understand anything about lean manufacturing? Lean manufacturing. Basically, it is the most efficient way to make the highest amount of whatever it is that you're making. The most efficient way. Okay. So in this term, we find in this process, because I was a process engineer for a while. We talk about the process and if there is any waste in the process that we can get rid of, right? Yep. Which causes this. And so one of the things that we call to try to find waste is called a 5 why process. And we ask a question 5 times, right? We ask the question why 5 times. And that is to try to find the root cause of any issue. Do you think that might work? So let's play husband and wife a second. Why are you yelling at the kids so much? Well, I'm yelling at the kids because they're naughty. Why do you think the kids are being naughty? Well, they're being naughty because, and then go from there 5 times to try to find some kind of root cause of what that is. And then maybe try to address that problem, and which could potentially knock out a whole bunch of other problems that are a result of this.
I love that.
Deep.
I might steal that from you. Yeah, I might start implementing that in my counseling.
Just some lean manufacturing.
Just continuing to drill down. That's a really cool method to continue drilling down. We use that. Counselors use that with anxiety all the time. Like, okay, well then what would happen? Well then what would happen? Well then what would happen? Yeah. You end up getting to a point where it's like, oh, and then I'd be fine. It's like, okay, well, what do you really have to worry about then? Yeah, no, I like that 5 why process.
Yeah, so that would be backwards to try to find the problem. It sounds like what you're doing is you're saying, here's this issue. What would happen if you continued this? And then so your 5 why is not a why, but it's like scenario driven that leads to trying to find someone's happiness going forward.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so like to use it with the bedtime example, like, all right, well, what will happen if we let them stay up? Well, they'll be cranky the next day. What will happen if they're cranky the next day? They might not function as well at school. What will happen if that happens? They'll come home in a bad mood. What will happen if that happens? I'll be frustrated with them. What will happen if that happens? We'll have another bad night. It's like, all right, I'm starting to see why this is something we should address.
Right. Yeah. I wish this conversation could go deeper today because I feel like, but I got to play dad, dude. I got to go to track and field day.
All right.
But I have some notes on this paper that will help us move into our next episode. And I got a couple bullet points I want to share with you. And I don't know if you have any that you want to talk about. And maybe these are a whole bunch of different episodes, but like performing under pressure. And like, how do you react to scenarios when there's a heavy amount of pressure on you, whether that's work, family, wife. And then like another topic, I think this is a standalone episode, but narcissism and narcissist. I've been doing a little reading on very little bit. I want to do more about what a narcissist is. And some people actually, they may not know this, but they themselves could potentially be a narcissist. Right. And so I would love to talk about that type of topic moving forward as well.
It's really popular right now in media, social media, narcissism.
Narcissism? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. It's getting talked about a lot. I think it's getting, I mean, we won't get into it deeply right now. I think it's getting over applied. I do think it's likely true that there's a lot of people, maybe even most people at some point have some narcissistic tendencies. I think we're really quick to label someone as a narcissist when they just have some selfishness or some poor social skills. But we can get into that stuff for sure.
Hey, you know who one of my favorite wrestlers was back in the day? The narcissist. Lex Luger, the narcissist.
Oh, Lex. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So he would come out and then he would just flex his muscles and wink at the girls and all that stuff. And nothing was ever wrong with him. And it was,
that's a good shtick because it's ultimately frustrating.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Kyle, man, your insight has been appreciated today. Thank you very much for, as always, taking time to do this. This is episode 1. If you want to find out more about us, you can go to Spotify, you can go to iTunes, or we're going to try to get this out whenever, every week. And any place that podcasts are downloaded, do us a favor, give us a 5-star review. That will help us bump up through indexing so you can so this podcast becomes more quote unquote findable. And we will talk to you guys next week.
Thanks, Dan.